Good morning everyone, Kabako Filipino. Magbasa tayo ng ating sariling history. History of the Philippine People by Agoncillo and Guerrero. Today is Thursday, March 2023. History of the Filipino People, Part 5, The Warriors. Topic number 23, The Liberation. Nandito na tayo sa paragraph, The Landings at Lingayen Gulf. Basa. The landings at Lingayen Gulf, preparatory to the recapture of Manila, MacArthur's forces landed on the southwest coast of Mindoro in mid-December 1944. This maneuver left the enemy at a disadvantage for his shipping lanes through the South China Sea were threatened. Carriers' strikes in the Manila Bay fooled the Japanese into believing that American landings would be made in that area. On January 9, 1945, the Americans unexpectedly landed at Lingayen Gulf, thereby taking the enemy by surprise. The Japanese could not offer stiff resistance, particularly because the number of their airplanes had dwindled and because it was difficult to defend the plains of Pangasinan. With the enemy disconcerted, the Americans landed at San Fabian. The Liberation forces now fanned out almost without resistance to Central Luzon. Meanwhile, the Japanese in desperation retreated to the mountains while those in Manila prepared for a last-ditch battle. The Liberation of Manila. Once MacArthur's forces had set foot on Lingayen, they relentlessly moved down south. It was imperative that Manila be captured without delay, for the city offered excellent harbor facilities. Consequently, amphibious operations were carried out in Batangas. Another assault force succeeded in putting ashore an army corps at the San Narciso area in Zambales. The move was obviously designed to cut off the Bataan Peninsula. By noon, the troops were in Subic. Subic Bay was secured without any opposition on January 30. Meanwhile, in Manila, the Japanese Marines began a series of atrocities. Meanwhile, in Manila, the Japanese Marines began a series of atrocities which led to the death of thousands of inhabitants. The rapidity with which the American troops were coming down the main highway to Manila infuriated the enemy. Men found in the streets were forcibly taken and compelled to work in Japanese airfields or installations. Horses, carts, trucks, and cars were confiscated and used for transporting Japanese soldiers and materials from one place to another. At least one hospital, the Quezon Institute, which was moved to the San Juan de Dios Hospital in 1942, was sacked by the Japanese and its patients and doctors massacred in cold blood. Houses and buildings were set on fire and their occupants shot. Manila was a city of conflagration. The same atrocious deeds were perpetrated in the provinces obviously as a vengeance for not collaborating with the Japanese. From Tarlac, the American army knifed its way rapidly to Pampanga, Bulacan, and finally to the outskirts of Manila. Between 5:30 and 6 p.m. of February 3, 1945, the advanced elements of the American forces entered Manila. There were few Filipinos who met the Americans, for most of them were indoors for fear of Japanese atrocity. A tank unit promptly rushed to the University of Santo Tomas campus and liberated the American and Allied prisoners. In the darkness of the night, the prisoners, all pale shadows of their former resolve, sang God Bless America, followed by the Star-Spangled Banner. In a moment, the night was filled with jubilant voices giving thanks to the glory of God in the highest. The return of the Commonwealth. The heavy rains did not deter the American troops from pursuing the enemy in Leyte. When it was finally determined that a large part of the island was in American hands, MacArthur ordered the organization of civil municipal government. The temporary seat of the Commonwealth government was established in Tacloban, Leyte on October 23, 1944. On November 15, 1944, on the 9th anniversary of the Commonwealth, President Sergio Osmeña addressed the Filipinos, saying, in part, the cause of democracy and liberty, the right of every people to govern itself and to be secure against aggression, the great moral issues of justice and righteousness and human dignity are being fought in the Philippines today. I am proud of the way the American soldier is fighting this battle. I am also proud of the way the Filipinos are aiding in that fight. On February 27, 1945, General MacArthur, who had taken over the government as military administrator, turned over the reins of their civil governments to President Osmeña. In turning over the Commonwealth to Osmeña, General MacArthur declared, God has indeed blessed our arms. The girded and unleashed power of America, supported by our allies, turned the tide of battle in the Pacific, culminating in the redemption of your soil and the liberation of your people. My country has kept the faith. Osmeña, touched by the simple yet significant event, said, let us pledge ourselves and all that is within us to the firm resolve to continue the fight with every ounce of our strength. On July 4, MacArthur proclaimed the liberation of the entire Philippines from the enemy. The end of the war. The Philippines having been liberated from the enemy, MacArthur proposed to carry the war right at Japan's door. Hundreds of B-29s, the super forts, bombed the mainland of Japan, reducing the latter's war potential. Important Japanese ports and cities like Tokyo, Nagoya, Osaka, and Korea were bombed day and night, giving the enemy no respite. On July 26, the Allies, through President Truman and Prime Minister Churchill, issued the Potsdam Proclamation and On July 26, the Allies, through President Truman and Prime Minister Churchill, issued the Potsdam Proclamation calling upon Japan to surrender unconditionally or face prompt and utter destruction. Japan, proud of her strength and prouder still of her samurai spirit, refused to surrender. On August 6, Tokyo time, the United States Air Force unleashed the deadly atomic bomb on Hiroshima, demolishing almost one-half of the city and killing thousands of inhabitants. On August 9, another atomic bomb was dropped on Nagasaki. To make things more difficult for the Japanese, Russia declared war against Japan on the same day. Faced with total annihilation, Japan unconditionally accepted the Allies' demand for surrender on August 15. On September 2, Japan signed the terms of surrender on board the battleship Missouri at Tokyo Bay. The war was over. Bukas na itong part 6, guys, the Third Republic. Topic number 24, post-war problems and the Republic. Lagay natin to March. For March. Hindi tayo bukas. March 4, 2023. Sana baka tayo umuwi ng Pilipinas matapos natin yung buong libro. Kasi ito na lang, konti na lang. Di ba? Sana kaya lang 10 days na lang. Matatapos ba natin ito ng 10 days? March 14, uwi na tayo ng Pinas, guys. Bakasyon tayo. So, bukas na ito. 24, post-war problems and the Republic. Kuhanin ko tong On September 2, Japan signed the terms of surrender aboard the battleship Missouri at Tokiwi. Itong kukuhanin nating dictionary word for today. Bakit kasi kailangan maghirap-hirap pa? Walang maidulot. Tingnan mo, kalahati nung magbomba sa nag-atomic bomb on Hiroshima, half of the city namatay. Biro mo yan, thousands ang namatay dyan. Diba? Bye everyone, God bless.